The message arrived on a Tuesday. It came not as a dramatic blast across all communications channels, but as a simple, directed signal to Earth's largest radio telescope array. At first, the scientists thought it was an equipment malfunction. The patterns were too regular, too intentional to be cosmic background noise. Dr. Alan Murphy stared at the data scrolling across his monitor. After 15 years at NASA, he had imagined this moment countless times, but reality felt strangely ordinary. The message was clear. We know you are there. We wish to meet. You've checked it 3 times, Alan asked his colleague. 5 times, said Paul, his eyes never leaving his own screen. It's real, and they're waiting for our answer. Within 72 hours, the president had assembled a response team. Alan found himself sitting in a White House meeting room alongside linguists, military personnel, and Susan Grant, the State Department's top diplomat. They call themselves the Galactic Senate, the National Security Advisor explained. According to their message, they represent over 200 spacefaring civilizations, and they want to offer us membership. Susan leaned forward. What's the catch? They're sending a ship. They want representatives. The room fell silent. Theoretical first contact had just become very real. 1 week later, Alan stood on the landing pad watching the stars. Susan stood beside him, her diplomatic briefcase clutched tightly. Nervous, he asked. Terrified, she admitted, but excited too. Everything changes tonight. The alien ship didn't announce itself with thunder or dramatic lights. It simply appeared, slipping into Earth's atmosphere with barely a whisper. It was smooth and pearl-colored, shaped like a flattened teardrop. It settled onto the landing pad with gentle precision. Remember, Susan whispered, no sudden movements. Alan nodded, though his heart pounded in his chest. They had rehearsed this moment endlessly. First contact protocol. Diplomatic restraint. A seam appeared in the ship's side, widening into a doorway. Light spilled out, and a ramp extended to the ground. The humans waited, breathing the cool night air. The first alien emerged slowly. It was tall and slender, with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water. It wore what appeared to be a full environmental suit with a clear bubble helmet revealing a face with large compound eyes. Behind it came 2 more aliens, each different from the first. One moved on 6 leg-like appendages, while the other floated slightly above the ground. Both wore fully sealed environmental suits. Greetings, the first alien said, its voice coming through a translator device. I am Ambassador Telex of the Galactic Senate Diplomatic Corps. Susan stepped forward. On behalf of Earth, we welcome you. I am Susan Grant, and this is Dr. Alan Murphy. The aliens suddenly froze. Their movements became agitated, and they began communicating rapidly among themselves in clicks and whistles. Is something wrong? Alan asked. The ambassador's voice came through strained. You are unprotected. No environmental suits. No armor. Alan looked down at his standard NASA jumpsuit, then at Susan in her formal diplomatic attire. This is our normal clothing. Is there a problem? The aliens backed away slightly. We were not informed your species walks exposed to raw atmosphere. This is most unusual. Susan maintained her diplomatic composure. I assure you, this is normal for us. Our atmosphere is safe for human life. It's not your atmosphere that concerns us, Telex replied. It's ours. Most species require extensive protection when exposed to environments not their own. The third alien finally spoke. We must insist on quarantine protocols before boarding. Unarmored biological entities present unknown variables. Susan and Alan exchanged glances. This wasn't in any of their first contact scenarios. We'll comply with your protocols, Susan said smoothly. Our goal is successful diplomatic relations. As they were led into separate quarantine chambers within the ship, Alan caught Susan's eye. The alien's reaction suggested something profound. Humans possessed an attribute so rare it alarmed advanced spacefaring species. The ship rose silently into the night, carrying the first humans toward the Galactic Senate, where their strange ability to walk unarmored would soon become legend. The journey to the Galactic Senate took 3 Earth days. Alan and Susan spent most of this time in separate quarantine chambers, subjected to various scans and tests. The aliens seemed both frightened and fascinated by the humans' lack of protective gear. On the final day, Ambassador Telex appeared on a screen in Alan's chamber. Our tests show you carry thousands of microorganisms, but none appear immediately harmful to Senate species. You will be permitted to exit quarantine upon arrival. Alan smiled with relief. Thank you. May I ask where exactly we're going? The Senate station orbits the 6th planet of the Rigel system. It was chosen for its central location among member worlds. When the ship finally docked, Alan and Susan were reunited in a small preparation room. Susan looked tired but excited. Ready to make history? She asked. Alan nodded. I just wish they'd let us bring more equipment. My phone doesn't even work here. Focus on diplomacy now, Susan reminded him. Science comes later. The door slid open, revealing Ambassador Telex and 2 security officers, all still in their environmental suits. Follow me, Telex said. The welcoming committee awaits. They stepped through the airlock into the main station, and Alan gasped. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet above them, creating a vast open space, filled with platforms, walkways, and small transport vehicles. Through enormous windows, a massive blue gas giant dominated the view, its swirling storms creating patterns of light and dark. But most impressive was the diversity of life. Aliens of every imaginable shape moved through the concourse. Some floated, others crawled, some rolled, and many walked on varying numbers of limbs. What they all shared was protective gear, suits ranging from simple breathing masks to full-body armor with complex life support systems. Everyone's wearing protection, Alan whispered. Susan nodded. We're the only ones exposed. As they walked, conversation stopped. Aliens turned to stare at the humans. Some moved quickly away, while others leaned in with obvious curiosity. A small hovering alien child pointed at them before being hurriedly pulled away by its parent. A tall, insect-like creature approached, wearing dark armor with official markings. I am Security Officer Xarvex. It clicked through its translator. I've been assigned to monitor the human delegation. Susan offered a diplomatic smile. We appreciate your assistance. Xarvex's compound eyes focused on their exposed faces. Is it true you breathe unfiltered atmospheric compounds directly into your respiratory systems? Yes, Alan answered. Our lungs process oxygen from the air. Fascinating and disturbing, Xarvex said. Please follow me to the diplomatic wing. As they walked across the main concourse, Alan noticed other species giving them a wide berth. Some whispered to each other. Others made gestures that might have been their version of pointing. Why is everyone so afraid of us? Alan asked their guide. Xarvex hesitated before answering. Your species is unique in our experience. Most civilizations evolved in specific environmental niches and require technological assistance outside them. That you can walk unprotected suggests either extreme biological resilience or what? Susan prompted. Or weaponized biology. Xarvex finished. Some delegates fear humans may be biological weapons themselves. Susan frowned. That's absurd. We're just adapted to our planet's conditions. A planet with extreme temperature variations, high radiation levels, diverse microbiomes, and constant environmental change. Xarvex noted, by galactic standards, Earth would be classified as a death world. They reached a large set of ornate doors marked with symbols. 2 guards stood on either side. The preliminary council awaits you, Xarvex said. They will determine if humans qualify for Senate hearings. Susan straightened her jacket. We're ready. As the doors swung open, revealing a semicircular chamber filled with armored representatives from dozens of worlds, Alan realized the truth. Their greatest asset in this new galactic community wasn't their technology or knowledge. It was simply being human. The preliminary council meeting lasted 6 hours. Susan did most of the talking while Alan observed the 23 representatives from different worlds. Though their body shapes varied wildly, their reactions to humans seemed consistent, a mixture of fear and fascination. When they finally returned to their assigned quarters, both humans were exhausted. "Well, that was intense," Alan said, dropping onto a couch that wasn't quite designed for human bodies. Susan nodded. "But productive. They granted us observer status while they review our application. Did you notice how they kept asking about diseases? They seem obsessed with our immune systems." "It makes sense if you think about it," Susan replied. "Species that evolved in controlled environments probably never developed robust defenses against pathogens." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime at the door. Alan opened it to find a small, blue-skinned alien in what appeared to be a lightweight environmental suit compared to others they'd seen. "Greetings, I am Zontai, Senate Biological Sciences Division," the alien said with a bow. "I hoped we might speak about human physiology, if you are willing." Susan gestured to a seat. "Please join us. This is Dr. Alan Murphy, our scientific representative." Zontai moved with careful, deliberate motions. "I have studied the preliminary data from your quarantine exams. Your species is remarkable." "How so?" Alan asked. "Most Senate species evolved in stable, specialized environments," Zontai explained. "The Morigi evolved in methane atmospheres. The Trill require high pressure. My species needs specific humidity and temperature ranges." Zontai's large eyes blinked slowly. "But humans, you evolved on a planet with drastic seasonal changes, varying temperatures, diverse atmospheric conditions, and countless pathogens. Your adaptability is unprecedented." Alan smiled. "We take it for granted, I suppose. Is that why everyone seems afraid of us?" "Partly," Zontai admitted. "There is also historical context. Earth creatures have been encountered before." This surprised both humans. "When?" Susan asked sharply. "Trade vessels visited your solar system over centuries. Some collected biological samples or simple animals. When brought to other worlds, these Earth organisms often thrived where they shouldn't have, sometimes disrupting local ecosystems." Alan leaned forward. "So Earth life has a reputation." "Indeed. There are Senate records of an Earth creature called rat surviving conditions that would kill most sentient species, and something called cockroach caused a station evacuation 300 years ago." Susan couldn't help laughing. "And now they meet humans, who are far more adaptable than either." "Precisely why some delegates are concerned," Zontai said. "The biological containment faction is already petitioning to have humans classified as a potential biological hazard." "That's ridiculous," Alan protested. "We're not dangerous. To us, perhaps not intentionally. But imagine species who have never needed to evolve immune systems. Your mere presence might be devastating." Susan's diplomatic instincts kicked in. "We understand these concerns and want to address them properly. Could you help us prepare information that might reassure the Senate?" Zontai hesitated, then nodded. "I will assist. Not all of us fear difference. Some of us study it." After Zontai left, Alan stared out the window at the massive gas giant. "We're the scary aliens," he said quietly. "All those sci-fi movies about invulnerable aliens, and it turns out we're the ones they should make horror films about." Susan joined him at the window. "We need to be careful. If they classify us as hazardous, Earth could be quarantined from galactic society before we even join. Or worse," Alan added. "Remember what humans do to invasive species that threaten ecosystems." They stood in silence, watching alien ships move across the face of the blue planet below, both realizing that humanity's greatest strength might also be its greatest diplomatic challenge. The next few days were filled with meetings and tours of the Senate station. Alan spent most of his time with Zontai, Learning about the biology of various Senate species, Susan worked with diplomatic teams to establish Earth's potential role in galactic politics. During a quiet meal in their quarters, Susan shared her concerns. The biological containment faction is gaining support. Vice Chancellor Krell is leading them. Who's Krell? Alan asked. A powerful politician from a species called the Dorvan. They evolved in sealed underground caverns with incredibly stable conditions. They're practically allergic to change. Alan pushed his food around his plate. Jeanty showed me some historical records today. Did you know there might have been another species like us once? Susan looked up with interest. What do you mean? They're called the precursors in the Senate archives. An ancient species that could adapt to multiple environments without protection. They disappeared thousands of years ago, but some of their technology still runs parts of the Senate station. Before Susan could respond, their communication panel chimed. The screen activated to show Ambassador Telix. Humans, we have a situation, Telix said without greeting. Your planet has sent additional representatives without proper clearance. Susan stood up quickly. What? We weren't informed of this. Their ship will dock in 1 hour. I suggest you meet them and explain our protocols. When the Earth ship arrived, Alan and Susan waited anxiously at the docking bay. The airlock opened to reveal a man and woman in standard Earth clothing, looking around with wide eyes. Patrick Miller, the man introduced himself. Engineer. This is Dr. Lisa Wright, medical specialist. Susan stepped forward. Why are you here? We weren't told about additional representatives. Lisa smiled. After your initial reports about alien biology, the United Nations felt we needed medical and engineering expertise in the delegation. This complicates things, Alan explained. The Senate is already nervous about unprotected humans walking around. Patrick looked confused. Unprotected? You mean without spacesuits? Why would we need those inside a space station? Before they could explain further, Vice Chancellor Krell appeared with 4 security officers. Krell was tall and pale, with a complex breathing apparatus covering the lower half of his face. His environmental suit gleamed with technology. More unarmored humans, Krell said, his translated voice cold. This is becoming an epidemic. Susan tried to smooth things over. Vice Chancellor, these are additional experts from Earth. I assure you they've been through the same quarantine procedures we underwent. That is insufficient, Krell replied. The biological containment faction has submitted a formal petition. Until the Senate rules on the human biological status, all humans must wear protective isolation suits while on this station. Ellen stepped forward. That's unnecessary. We've shown no signs of being harmful to anyone. Yet, Krell said, your very presence alarms many species. Your ability to breathe various atmospheric mixtures, resist temperature changes, and carry millions of microorganisms makes you walking biological hazards. Lisa, despite being new to the situation, spoke up. With respect, those traits are natural adaptations. They're not weapons. Intent is irrelevant, Krell replied. A toxic gas kills whether released by accident or design. Susan recognized the diplomatic crisis unfolding. What would satisfy your concerns, Vice Chancellor? A formal hearing before the full Senate. Proof that humans are not biological weapons. Until then, you will wear isolation suits like civilized species, or you will be confined to your quarters. After Krell left, the 4 humans gathered in their living area. So we're basically under house arrest? Patrick asked. Unless we agree to wear suits that we don't need, Alan confirmed. Susan paced the room. This is a test. Krell wants to establish dominance over Earth before we even join. Then we need to challenge him, Lisa said firmly. And I think I know how. Lisa's plan was simple but bold. Instead of fighting the quarantine, the humans would use it to demonstrate their adaptability in a controlled scientific manner. We need to show them we're not dangerous, but special, she explained to the group. If they fear our biology, let's use biology to prove our worth. Patrick nodded enthusiastically. I could build environmental chambers that simulate different Senate species home conditions. And I could monitor our biological responses, Lisa added. Show how humans adapt without harm to others. Susan considered the idea. It's risky. If any of us shows negative reactions, it could reinforce their fears. It's better than sitting here wearing suits we don't need, Alan said. Besides, I've been studying the precursor records. Their legacy might help us. The next day, Susan requested a meeting with the Senate Scientific Council, which included John T. and representatives from 12 species. Vice Chancellor Krell also attended, his suspicion evident even through his breathing mask. Humans propose a demonstration, Susan announced, a scientific trial of human adaptability under controlled conditions. John T.'s interest was immediate. What kind of demonstration? Patrick stepped forward with diagrams he had prepared. Environmental chambers simulating various Senate species' home atmospheres. We will enter them unprotected to demonstrate our natural adaptability. Krell made a dismissive gesture. This proves nothing. You may simply be resistant to many environments, yet still carry harmful microbes. That's why we'll include biological monitoring, Lisa explained. Show that our microbiome remains contained within our bodies, not weaponized as you fear. The council members whispered among themselves. Finally, Jean Tai spoke. I support this proposal. Objective data would be valuable. Krell stood in opposition. And if they prove dangerous, who takes responsibility? We do, Alan said firmly. Earth does. But if we prove harmless, the quarantine ends. 3 days later, the demonstration was ready. Patrick had worked with Senate engineers to build 5 chambers, each recreating a different species' home environment. Lisa had set up biological monitoring equipment to record every detail of their responses. A large crowd gathered to watch. News of the human demonstration had spread throughout the station. Susan went first, entering a chamber with high gravity and dense atmosphere similar to the Dwarven homeworld, Krell's species. Krell watched with obvious doubt as Susan breathed normally in conditions that would crush many species. His breathing apparatus worked overtime as he processed his agitation. Next came Alan, who entered a chamber with methane-rich air that would be toxic to humans in high concentrations. The chamber had safe levels, but still far beyond what most oxygen breathers could tolerate. He emerged 30 minutes later, slightly lightheaded but smiling. Patrick demonstrated human temperature adaptation, moving between a freezing chamber and a heated one that simulated a desert world. Lisa showed human resistance to radiation levels that would harm many species. Throughout the trials, Lisa's monitors confirmed that no harmful human microbes escaped their bodies. The Senate scientists watched in growing amazement as the data came in. Remarkable, John Tai said, reviewing the results. Humans can function in environments that would kill 90% of Senate species without protection. Krell remained unconvinced. Adaptability does not equal safety. No, Susan agreed, but it does equal potential. Humans could serve as intermediaries between species with incompatible environmental needs. As the demonstration concluded, Alan noticed something strange. The ancient precursor technology in the lab area seemed to respond to human presence. Lights brightened when he approached certain panels. Controls that had been dormant for centuries glowed faintly under his touch. He said nothing, but made eye contact with Susan. Something deeper was happening here, a connection between humans and these ancient beings that had once walked unarmored just like them. The scientific demonstration had achieved its purpose. The Senate Scientific Council voted to allow the humans to move freely through the station without environmental suits. Many Senate members remained wary, but curiosity was now replacing fear. Ellen sought out John Tai the next day. I need to learn more about the precursors, he explained. Is there someone who specializes in their history? John T's eyes blinked in their peculiar sideways motion. There is Meveloth, our historical archivist. But why this interest? Alan hesitated before answering. During the demonstration, I noticed some of the older technology responding to me. It felt deliberate. Zhang grew very still. That should not be possible. Precursor technology is largely dormant, has been for millennia. Mevloth's office was located deep in the Senate archives, surrounded by physical records and artifacts. The archivist was a small, hunched figure with 6 limbs and skin that resembled ancient parchment. Despite his frail appearance, his voice was strong and clear. "Humans interest me," Mevloth said when Alan explained his request. "You are the first species in recorded Senate history who share the precursor's environmental adaptability." Alan leaned forward. "What happened to them?" "They vanished approximately 25,000 years ago," Mevloth explained. "At their peak, they created much of the core technology that still powers this station. Then, quite suddenly, they disappeared from the galaxy." Mevloth led Alan to a sealed room filled with artifacts. "These are some remaining precursor items. Most of their technology ceased functioning after they vanished." Alan scanned the room until his eyes fell on a cylindrical object that seemed to glow faintly. "What's that?" "An information storage device, we believe. It has never activated for any species." As Alan approached it, the cylinder's glow intensified. When he touched it, symbols appeared on its surface. Mevloth made a whistling sound of shock. "Impossible. No one has ever activated a precursor artifact." Back in the human quarters, Patrick was working on a portable environmental adapter based on Senate technology. He looked up when Alan entered. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," Alan replied, showing him the images he'd captured of the cylinder. The precursors built most of the Senate station. Their technology responds to human touch. Susan joined them, returning from a diplomatic session. "There's movement on our Senate application." The demonstration changed minds. "I think there's more to it," Alan said. "Look at these anatomical comparisons." He displayed images of precursor remains alongside human skeletal structures. The similarities are striking. Lisa studied the images with professional interest. The skeletal structure, cranial capacity, limb arrangement, they're remarkably close to human. And this is from a species that evolved in a completely different star system. Patrick asked. "That's what the Senate believes," Alan explained. "But what if they're wrong? What if there's a connection between humans and precursors?" Susan looked concerned. "If you're suggesting what I think you are, it could complicate our diplomatic position. Or strengthen it," Alan countered. "If humans are somehow related to the precursors who built this place, we may have more claim to be here than they realize." Patrick, who had been examining the Senate station's systems during his work, spoke up. "There's something else. I found subsystems throughout the station that have been dormant for centuries. They're starting to activate now that we're here." "What kind of subsystems?" Susan asked. "Environmental controls, security protocols, information archives. Systems that would have been vital to the precursors," Patrick explained. "It's like the station is waking up to human presence." Lisa looked thoughtful. "If there is a biological connection between humans and these precursors, it might explain why we can walk unarmored where others can't." The implications hung in the air between them. If humans were indeed descended from or related to the mysterious precursors, their arrival at the Senate was not just first contact. It was a homecoming. News of the human connection to precursor technology spread quickly through the Senate station. Some species reacted with wonder and excitement. Others, particularly those aligned with Vice Chancellor Krell, viewed the development with alarm. "Dangerous times," Krell announced in an emergency session. "These humans arrive, and suddenly ancient systems activate. This cannot be coincidence." Susan addressed the gathering with careful diplomacy. "We're as surprised as you are. We seek only to understand this connection." The debate raged for hours. Some senators suggested the humans should have full access to precursor areas. Others wanted them confined again. No agreement was reached except to continue investigations carefully. As the humans returned to their quarters that evening, Alan felt uneasy. They're scared of us now for different reasons. We went from biological threats to historical mysteries. Susan nodded. And mysteries make people nervous. We need to tread carefully. They didn't see the shadowy figures watching them from the maintenance tunnels. They didn't notice the small devices planted near their quarters. The next morning, Alan and Mevloth planned to examine more precursor artifacts. Lysa would study the biological similarities between humans and precursor remains. Patrick continued mapping the awakening systems throughout the station. Susan had just stepped out to meet with friendly Senate delegates when the explosion rocked the human quarters. The blast was small but targeted, reaching the outer wall of their common room. Warning sirens blared as emergency force fields contained the damage. Patrick was thrown across the room, striking his head on a table. Alan was closest to the blast, his arm badly cut by flying debris. Security officers rushed in, led by Xarvex. "Are you injured? Medical units are coming." Lisa was already tending to Patrick, who was dazed but conscious. She moved to Alan next, examining his bleeding arm. "It's not severe," Alan said, wincing. "Who would do this?" Xarvex's compound eyes scanned the room. Extremists, most likely. Not everyone welcomes change in the Senate. When Susan returned, her face was pale with shock and anger. "This is unacceptable." An attack on diplomatic representatives. The station's head of security arrived with medical teams. As a doctor examined Alan's wound, something unexpected happened. A medical scanner passed over his injury, and the technician gasped. "This healing rate is abnormal," the alien doctor said. "The wound is already closing." Lisa moved closer to observe. "That's typical human healing. Our bodies repair minor damage quickly." The doctor stepped back. "Not this quickly. And there's something else." The scanner displayed readings that made the alien medical team exchange glances. One of them spoke quietly to Xarvex, who turned to the humans. "Your blood has activated something." They followed Xarvex to a secure laboratory where Alan's blood sample was being examined. A drop had been placed in an analysis device, and the machine was now projecting a holographic display of swirling symbols. Mevloth was called in, his ancient eyes wide with excitement. "A precursor bloodlock," he explained. Their most secure technology required genetic authentication. The hologram suddenly expanded, filling the room with star maps and images of planets. At the center appeared a humanoid figure speaking in an unknown language. "Can you translate it?" Susan asked. Mevloth shook his ancient head. "The language is lost to us. But this is undeniable proof of connection between humans and precursors." Xantai, who had joined them, studied the data streams. Not just connection. Based on these genetic markers, humans appear to be direct descendants. The implications stunned everyone present. The humans weren't just related to the builders of the Senate. They were their children, somehow seated on Earth thousands of years ago. As word spread through the station, the atmosphere changed. Some species bowed slightly when humans passed. Others watched with renewed suspicion. The assassination attempt had failed, but it had revealed a truth that would forever change humanity's place in the galaxy. The emergency Senate session that followed lasted 2 full days. Species from across the galaxy argued about the implications of humans being precursor descendants. Security was tight after the assassination attempt. Every entrance had triple guards. Susan stood before the full Senate, her voice steady and clear. Earth did not know its connection to the precursors. "We came here as friends, not claiming any special status. But now that we know the truth, we ask to take our rightful place among you, not as rulers, but as equals." Vice Chancellor Krell rose to speak. "The humans activate dormant systems. They walk unprotected where we cannot. They survive conditions that would kill most of us. How can we be sure the precursors didn't create them as weapons against us?" Murmurs spread through the chamber. Fear and uncertainty rippled across many alien faces. Xantai stepped forward, surprising everyone. "I have studied human biology extensively. If they were designed as weapons, they would be far more dangerous. Their biology suggests adaptation, not domination. Meveloth joined him. The historical records support this. Before they vanished, the precursors spoke of creating inheritors, not conquerors. As the debate continued, Alan worked with Patrick and Lisa in a secured lab. The holographic message from Alan's blood had been partially translated, revealing fragments of the precursors' final plans. They were dying, Alan explained, sharing their findings with Susan during a break. Some disease or condition was killing them. They couldn't find a cure. So they seeded Earth with modified versions of themselves. Lisa added, humans were designed to be hardier, more adaptable. We were their solution to survival. And they left all this technology keyed to our genetic code. Patrick said, waiting for us to reach the stars. The Senate vote came on the third day. The mood had shifted from fear to cautious acceptance. Humans would be granted full Senate membership with special recognition of their precursor heritage. In a private ceremony, the Senate High Chancellor presented Susan with a small medallion. This grants the right to walk unarmored in Senate chambers. Until now, only precursors held this honor. Now, it belongs to humans. Susan accepted it with a bow. We will use this privilege with respect for all species. In the weeks that followed, human presence expanded throughout the Senate station. Alan established a research partnership with Jean-T and Meveloth, studying the connection between human and precursor biology. Lisa started medical exchanges, helping other species improve their resistance to environmental factors. Patrick worked on adaptation technology that would allow more Senate species to function without full environmental suits. We can serve as bridges, he explained to interested engineers, using what we've learned from our own adaptability to help others. 1 month after their arrival, Susan stood on an observation deck with Alan, watching ships arrive from distant worlds. Earth is sending more representatives next week, she said, and 3 Senate species have requested permission to establish embassies on Earth. Alan smiled. Quite a change from being considered walking biological hazards. But that's still part of what we are, Susan reflected. We're dangerous by nature, adaptable enough to survive almost anywhere, tough enough to resist what kills others. The difference is how we use that power. Below them, Senate members from a dozen worlds gathered. Most still wore environmental protection, but some had begun testing simplified systems based on Patrick's designs. A few brave individuals wore only breathing masks, inspired by human example. We're changing them, Alan observed. And they're changing us, Susan replied. That's what the precursors intended, I think. Not for us to replace other species, but to help them adapt and grow stronger. As they watched, a new ship docked, bearing the first official Earth ambassador to the Galactic Senate, the only species permitted to walk its hallowed halls unarmored bridging worlds that once seemed impossibly far apart.